be a student, find someone you can learn from. That's important. They're going to have more wisdom than you. They're going to have more life experience and investing or business experience. So find someone to learn from, a mentor, a coach, whatever it is. Find a running buddy, someone who's at the same place as you, where you can bounce ideas off of each other and share the wins and losses. Someone you feel like is going to push you to keep going. And then find someone to teach. Everything that we learn isn't just for ourselves. I think if you do those three things, you'll be successful in any area of life, whether it's faith, family, fitness, finances, investing, whatever it is. Be a student, have a running buddy, and find someone to teach.
This is the Fit Investor Podcast, where we talk about how to live a more holistic life of being fit, not only financially, but physically and faithfully. We'll be joined by experts in all these areas to share their experiences and actionable and practical tips so that you can be a fit investor too. So now let's join our hosts, Cale Delaney and Brenna Carls.
Welcome to another episode of the Fit Investor. I'm your host, Cale Delaney, and we're missing our co-host, Brenna, as you probably see, but she's on a family vacation, so just me for today. But that's all right, because we get an awesome guest today, Mr. Austin Largusa. So,
What's going on?
Austin is a husband, father, and pastor at a church out in San Francisco Bay Area. And in 2019, he actually jumped into the virtual wholesale scene. He had some initial success in Cleveland, Ohio, where they saved up enough money to buy a home for their family in California. However, he discovered that his mortgage application was rejected, and finding out that actually 1.6 million mortgage applications had been rejected at that same time in 2019. So that put their family on a mission to help 1,000 home renters become homeowners over the next 25 years without any banks. And in their first year of investing, they purchased 12 investment properties utilizing creative financing strategies. These properties were purchased outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and Cleveland, Ohio. And they were able to find families who were also turned away by banks and give them the opportunity to own a home that they could be proud of. Currently, Austin is focused on sharing how creative strategies can work anywhere, and especially in this shifting market, the opportunities for untraditional deal structure are everywhere, even in expensive markets like the Bay Area. So Austin specializes in finding deals on the MLS and working with agents to maximize their clients' profits by using creative strategies. So, Mr. Austin, welcome to the Fit Investor.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm excited. I feel like, man, I don't do too many podcasts. So this is really exciting for me. And I've loved what you guys have been doing with this.
Yeah, thank you. And you should be doing more because, man, you got some awesome stuff going on. And I'm excited to hear the story. Like we talked about offline, and I know we didn't hit on it heavy in the bio, but we really wanted to spend some time and start out with discovering more about what you're doing as a pastor in the San Francisco Bay Area and take us through your faith journey. Let's start off with that. When did you become a Christian? Did you grow up in a Christian household? Just take us back a bit and how this all came about.
Yeah, I didn't have the privilege of growing up in church. My grandfather was a pastor for many years here in San Francisco, planted a church in the 60s and then planted another church in the 90s, a little farther north of San Francisco. And so my family has had this history in faith, but somehow it skipped my mom. She grew up in church, but when she had us, for whatever reason, it wasn't a point of emphasis for her. And so I knew that my family was into it. They were going to church, and we were growing up in Hawaii. So it was harder for us to be influenced by them and proximity. We weren't going to church with my grandparents because we were so far away. And so I grew up without it. And I grew up in a house in Hawaii. I tell everyone, like, on the island I grew up on, Kauai, like, we were all so broke that, man, like, there was no comparison to anything. Nobody cared about what you wore. Nobody cared about what kind of house you lived in or what kind of car you drove. But the challenge with it, with all of that, and this is a big part of my story, is that in those times, most people don't know that Hawaii was actually known as the ice capital of the world. Ice as in crystal methamphetamine. The most just tore families apart, mine included. And so I grew up in a house where both my parents were addicted to it. Oh, wow. And alcoholism was a big deal. And I would even call it, today I would call it, mental health was a challenge, something that we didn't have language for back in the early 2000s or late 90s. And so I knew nothing, but I knew there had to have been a God. Somehow there had to have been a God. And my prayer, I remember oftentimes was, God, if you're real, get me out of this. And so I'm the youngest of three. I was the only one in my family who never touched any kind of substance. So it was really challenging. I knew at some point in my life that I was going to do something to help people. That was my mission. I didn't know what. I just knew I was going to do something to help people. And so my family ended up moving from Hawaii to Las Vegas because Hawaii was super expensive at that time, still is today. But we went to Las Vegas where it was a lot cheaper. And it was my senior year of high school. A week before this day, my mom and dad sat me down and told me that my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And when times are really hard and things feel desperate, everyone reaches out for something, whether it be a vice that kind of gets you into a habit of doing something that just makes you feel more secure and comforted, whatever it is, everyone reaches for something. And I didn't actually have anything to reach for. And so I'm walking to school, senior year of high school, and this guy who I see a lot walks up and he's, hey, what are you doing after school? And in my head, I'm like, bro, I don't even know you. Like, why are you asking? He says, why don't you come with me to the palace? I said, what's the palace? He said, it's my youth group for church. He used to call it the palace because it sounded better than saying, come to church with me. So I said, in my mind, I was like, my mom's going through cancer. My grandfather has been a pastor for decades. I know there's some sense of God somewhere. I might as well just go. And so I went to a youth night. I would honestly say it was corny. It felt very cheesy, but it felt like home at the same time. And just a ton of people who didn't know me from anyone else. And somehow, for whatever reason, felt like this kid is welcome here and he can be a part of what we're doing. So fast forward, I graduate from high school. I moved to the Bay Area where I am now to live with my grandparents, my grandfather, the pastor of a church. And my dream was always to move out here because I have a bunch of family. And I just started going with them, going to church with them. I started going to all the youth camps in the summers, started doing all this stuff. And eventually it got to a point at a youth camp where they started talking about God as our father. And for me, it was challenging because I had a father. And my image of him and my perception of him wasn't the best. And so when they said, God's your father, I was like, no, I have one. I don't want another one. Don't do that again. But they started explaining what that meant. A father who sees me, who cares about me, who speaks encouraging, life-giving things about me. A father who's always present, who isn't just there physically, but is like presently there emotionally, is aware of how I'm feeling. Like a father who actually like cares. And it was in that moment where I said, all right, God, if this is true, then I'm all in. Like I'm the kind of guy, I don't dip my toe in anything. If I'm going to go in, I'm diving in head first in whatever I do. I did the same thing with real estate. Like I'm going to dive in head first. And so I did. And I will tell you this because I know people will be listening. I don't want to say that things didn't get better when I said, yeah, Jesus, you're going to be my Lord. Like it didn't turn around like that. I wish it did. I honestly wish it did. But it didn't. What I learned over time was it wasn't necessarily about what happened in that moment per se, but more so how I lived this out for the rest of my life. And I've found times where in the past, if things were hard, I would often seclude myself, or I'd have this feeling of nobody cares, nobody knows what I'm going through. Now I can say I have something to cling to. And it's not seclusion or isolation. It's hope. And it's hope in a person. And it's hope in what my future is. And it's hope to know that even today, as I'm going through things, like this isn't the end. And I have people around me, man, people who care about me and support me and ask me how I'm doing and have honest conversations with them. And God has given me a community of people who actually care about the inner workings of my life. And so from that time, I started volunteering in our church, started teaching like Sunday school for the kids, which was a big passion of mine. I went to Bible college to study for youth ministry. After that, found this really small, at that time, I told my grandfather, I feel like there's something more for me out there. I love what this church has given me and how you guys have supported me, but I feel like there's something else out there for me. And so I found this really small startup church, a church plant with 8 people in 2010. And I've been there ever since.
Oh, wow.
And now we have 2 campuses. We get to serve hundreds of families. And my wife and I actually pastor this campus up here now.
Nice.
So that was a long story, Kale,
No.
but I wanted to show the journey and make
Yeah.
sure that I point out that it's not say yes to Jesus and everything gets better.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't get worse. But when I look at it now, I don't know how people can go through the things they're going through without God. Like, I actually feel sad
Right.
because, man, if someone would just trust in Jesus, there's so much hope inside of you. And hope is something that you can't buy hope. Or like you can't get enough rental properties and that gives you hope. Like hope is in a person and that person gives you hope. That's the only way you get it. And so to even consider if I was still going through the things that I'm going through today without God, geez, I don't know where I would be, man.
Yeah.
That's a scary thought for me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's a wonderful story. And thank you for sharing some of those things. A couple things that kind of stood out to me that I wanted to highlight is, so I guess first off, just going back to, you talked about the drug addiction in your family and that you were the only one who didn't get into it in your immediate family. What was it, do you think, that kept you out of it? I don't know if you've ever thought about that, or if there is a specific thing that kept you from getting into that same mess.
Yeah, when you're around it as much as I was, and anyone who's lived in or around that environment can probably attest to this. When you're around it, one of two things happens. Either you fall into this trap of everyone else is doing it, so I have to do it too, or
Mhm.
you grow like this, like just incredible disgust for it. And that's what I felt. I saw the trajectory of where it was taking people that I loved. And
Mhm.
I just felt like that's not going to be me. Like my mom was like the brightest person you've ever met in your life. No, barely got out of high school, no college education, was able to work for Charles Schwab, was did really good for herself. And my feeling now, my mom has since passed. My feeling now is that actually limited her. That was like a ceiling for her. And if that wasn't in her life, I can just imagine the things she could have done. One of my brothers, dude, the smartest guy I've ever met in my life, like just intelligent like I've never experienced before. And not like, how would I say it? Like he's not so book smart that he's like socially awkward, but he's book smart and I would call it street smart.
Right.
And just the bright man, so smart. And I saw that just derail everything that he could have done. And so when I'm in that house and I'm looking at the potential that's inside of them and I'm thinking, there's no way this is all there is for me.
Right.
There's no way. In that environment, I'll tell you, in that environment where I was growing up, because it was such a big problem, if you graduated from high school, that's like the everyday person graduating from Harvard. Like it was that big of a deal. If you graduated from high school,
Mm.
a lot of people's ceilings were, I'm just going to get a job at Safeway. And if I work there for 20 plus years, they'll give me a pension. I'll
Mm.
be able to retire and I'll live off of Social Security. That was the ceiling for people.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was. Like now I can attribute that to saying, I think this was God. I honestly think it was God's grace protecting me because
Mhm.
there was something in the future for me. And it was just me being able to see it and identify that's not where I wanted to go.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you made that link there at the end, because the next thing I wanted to touch on, and I guess what I'm trying to piece together here is, I love how God moves in mysterious ways, right? And oftentimes when we look back at our lives, and then we're able to see in that hindsight how all these pieces came together. At the time, you have no idea what's going on, but when you're able to look back, you can start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So yeah, I 100% agree. I think that's certainly God's providence in your life. And I think one of the other important steps in the plan was when this kid in high school, right, asked you to come to youth group. And I really wanted to highlight that one because there's been so many stories that I've heard, a couple other guests that we've had on this podcast, but just in general as well. So many stories you hear where somebody's spiritual journey has really been kicked off because somebody invited them to church. And we oftentimes, myself included, don't look at that as something of great import that we do or should do. And oftentimes we don't do it, right? It becomes that whole, maybe it's awkward or whatever, or this or that, or fear of rejection and all that type of stuff. But again, just hearing it so many stories over and over now, it's convicting me a little bit right now of, I need to start doing that stuff more. And especially, I just started volunteering with the youth group at our church with high school students. And so this Sunday, I'm going to bring this up because this is a perfect example of how important one little action can be in setting a path for somebody in their life. I think that's such an important thing. And especially with youth today and all the mess that we have going on in society, for somebody of that age to step out and be bold for Christ is becoming more and more rare. So I'm just curious if, like, in your church, I'm assuming you have a youth group and everything in your church, do you guys have any focus on evangelism and that type of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Can I just do this first? I want to shout out the kid that actually invited me.
Yeah.
William Wong became my best friend.
Oh, cool.
He was a year younger than me. We did everything together, man.
Yeah.
And I appreciate him so much for just having that conversation with me, because it definitely changed the direction of my life. And the invitation piece is such a key piece for us. Here's the reality. It is going to be awkward, and you are going to be rejected, and you're going to say the wrong things, and you're going to mess up, and you're probably going to have to invite like 50 people before anyone even entertains the idea. And that's fine. Like that, our responsibility is this. Our responsibility as Christians is to model Jesus' life and to be a light. The Bible literally says we're salt and light in the earth. We're supposed to have these conversations. This is normal. Now, in Western American church, we think this is crazy. God, make me bold so I can invite someone to church. That's not even bold, man. That's like normal. It's like breathing. If God has really done something in our lives, it ought to show by the joy that we have. It ought to show by the gentleness and kindness in our hearts. It ought to show by the generosity. And these conversations should come up. Now, I don't say that to condemn anyone. I say that to encourage Christians around the world. Like, this is normal. This is not something that requires a ton of boldness. Now, I understand there's introverts and some people who just feel socially awkward. I get it. But you all know people. Like, we all know people. Invitation is important for me. We have a staff, a very small staff. Most of them are volunteers who come in and give of their times. But I tell everyone on our staff team, if the only people you hang out with are from church, like, you've got to go find new friends. If you don't have friends that don't go to church, we're missing the point. Look, this isn't like an exclusive social club where we get together on a Sunday to like a book club and we sing a song and we feel good about it. The whole point of this was to send people out and to spread the gospel to everyone. And so we can't be confined to a Sunday morning hour or hour and a half where we get together and have a little huddle and then we go out into the world and not do anything with what we just heard. Like, that's not the point of what we're doing. And so I challenge everyone on our team, get involved in social circles, right? This is literally one of the main reasons that I joined a gym. I joined a gym because a lot of my friends are in church, and who am I going to evangelize to if all of my friends are in church? And so I joined the gym to meet new people, to make new relationships, and to have people that I can actually share with, right? I go to the same Starbucks. I've been going to the same Starbucks for 8 years, not because I like Starbucks coffee, which I don't. I'm very big on and specific on what kind of coffee I like, but I go to Starbucks because there's an opportunity to meet people. Mm. And so I've been going to the same Starbucks for 8 years since my oldest son was born. And over time, I've got to meet all the baristas. I've gotten to meet all the managers. I've been able to pray with baristas there in the middle of Starbucks. I've been able to encourage people, to challenge them in their journey and where they're going. Invitation is key, but the way that I think people should be invited is through relationship. And so you've got to make these relationships with people, and you've got to find yourselves in circles and networks outside of just church stuff. Now, here's a crazy thing, Harold. We have this young couple in our church. They're 20, I think they're like 25 and 24. Some of the most mature people you will ever meet. They have a goal every day. They take evangelism to the next level. They have a goal every day to have 7 gospel conversations.
Wow.
And so they'll go to Target, like while they're shopping, and they're thinking, man, who does Jesus want me to talk to in this store? They're going to TJ Maxx, walking through the aisles, looking for clothes and thinking, God, is there someone in this store who just needs to know that you love them? And when you start thinking that way, of course there is. There's people all around us who need to know that God loves them. And so I'm just big on that, Kale. Like invitation, 100% is normal, everyday Christian life. It should be, at least.
Right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And the blessing and the curse, so to speak, of living in the Western societies is we live very comfortable lives. It is what it is. We live very comfortable lives. And so we take a lot of things for advantage, and God being one of the foremost things. But I've traveled a bit in my life, and I typically travel to like third world countries and that type of thing. And the amount of spiritual fervor that you see in these people who are living lives of very little means, and the joy that you see in their lives is astounding when you compare it to our lives in the Western society. Right. And it's that the love of money is the root of all evil, right? We get sucked into the materialistic world, the materialistic life, and idolize that and lose focus on God. Whereas these people who don't have those materialistic things, they cling to God because that's all they have. And it's something that I think about a lot, and I struggle with personally, honestly, of how do we bring that same joy into our lives so that it overflows, so that it becomes a daily practice, like you're saying, right?
Yeah, I think, Kale, I've learned this about people. We like baby steps.
Right.
If it's too far out there, there's no way I'm going to make any progress towards it. And so what I always tell people is consider where you are today. What kind of circles are you in right now? So a lot of the people watching this are going to be investing in real estate. Is there a way in real estate and the circles you're involved in where you're able to share or exemplify or model some of what you want to actually share as in accordance to the gospel, right? Just in your everyday circles. And so one of the things that I started with was all the local meetups that I go to. And I try to go to every single one of them and support what everyone's doing. But when I go there and they have a time where they're like, oh, what are you working on? Share a project. Or do you need a partner? What are you looking for? And everyone gets up and shares, I'm looking for money. I'm looking for deals. I'm looking for this. And so one of the ways that I started was I thought, okay, God is generous. And so I'm going to share generosity. And so in that circle, all I would say is, hey, I've been buying rentals out of state. If anyone needs help, I'd love to sit down and help you. And so that's it. I'm not looking for anything. I'm just looking to give. And then we would sit down and I would just give them everything I knew. And it wasn't 100% of the time, but I'd say probably about 60, 70% of the time, they would say, it's weird that you're giving me all this information for free when everyone else is charging money and they want you to buy their course. Why do you do that? And then that just opens the door for me to have this conversation. I do the same thing with my kids' soccer practice, or my oldest does hockey, right? Like when I'm there, I'm watching my son play, of course, but man, I'm around other adults. Like, why can't I share any sense of joy or peace or hope with any of them? And it's an easy conversation. Hey, which one is yours? Or we start talking about how long they've done hockey. And then here's what most people ask. Hey, what do you do for work? For me, it's easy because I'm a pastor. So that conversation comes up often.
Right.
For your everyday person who maybe doesn't do this vocationally, it might be a little workaround to get there. But if you sit down and you ask, God, give me wisdom on how these conversations can flow so I can get there, you can get there. Let's even consider this. Today's Friday. Everyone on here who works a W-2, Regular business hours is going to have Saturday and Sunday off. On Sunday, most of you are going to go to church. On Monday, you're going to get to work and your coworkers are going to say, how was your weekend? I always tell our team, like, why don't you be honest? Like, why don't you be honest when people ask what you did over the weekend? Don't hide church. Like,
Right.
you did that. Don't lie.
Right.
Just be
Yeah.
honest. Hey, I went to church. I had a good time. It felt great. That's all it is. And so it's just figuring out, where are these opportunities in what I'm doing today? We don't have to create anything new, but there's opportunities where you are. If you have neighbors, there's an opportunity. If you have kids in school during drop off and pickup time, there's always 2 to 3 minutes to chat with other parents. If you're single and you go out a lot, like, ask the barista or the bartender or wherever you go, just ask them how their day is. Like, people, uh, I would say this, people want to know that they're seen. And so if you can just take a minute just to acknowledge someone's presence and
Right.
ask some actual questions,
Right.
like, that in itself is probably more than most of the local churches doing,
Yeah.
as far as we can put it under the umbrella of evangelism, even though Paul and Peter in the Bible would probably laugh at us for calling that evangelism. For us, we can put it under that umbrella.
Yeah, no, thank you for that actually, because I think that's laden with wisdom right there. And that's something that our listeners can hopefully take to heart, is that you're absolutely right. Look at where we are, look at the opportunities that are presented to us. It doesn't perhaps need to be you standing on the street corner with the sign and saying the honk for Jesus type of thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that either. But yeah, it can be the simple conversations of the people that you're around regardless. So I like that. I like that. Taking the baby steps but still making it intentional, right? Making it an intentional part of your day and part of your life.
Hey guys, it's Brenna Carl, CEO and co-founder of The Mortgage Shop. When I'm not spending my time searching for the best pizza in town, working out because of pizza, or fighting sharks as Kale likes to say, I spend my time educating clients on the best investment products that will help them build generational wealth and making sure their loan process is as smooth as warm butter on a piece of toast. Call us today to get started with your investment journey at 800-816-7982 or talk more about pizza. Talk to you soon.
The other thing I wanted to highlight on from your story here was you brought up that when you were I think it was at the youth camp, and they started talking about God as a father, and you had that immediate visceral reaction of, oh, I've seen what a father is, and it's not that great. Like, I don't really want another. That again is something that you hear so often in people's lives. And honestly, a lot of people get turned off from the church or from Christianity right off the bat because of that, because of bad experiences they've had with fatherhood. And not only that, but because of perhaps bad experiences that they've had with somebody that they knew that was a Christian, or a church that something happened or they didn't agree with, Christianity, that's not for me. And the thing we always need to keep in mind is that obviously none of us are perfect. Even in the Christian circle, though, it's still a thing that goes around that when you become a Christian, you're expected to be perfect, more or less, right? And if you commit some type of sin, oh, look at you, you're just another hypocrite like everybody else, right? So what is that religion doing for you, right? You see that type of thing a lot. And we just always need to keep in mind that nobody is going to be a perfect reflection of God, right? The only person that ever walked this earth that ever was Jesus, right? So if somebody who is a Christian or a church or the father figure or whatever, just because you may have a bad experience with that does not mean that is representative of God and Christianity and Jesus. So that's such a common objection or common experience, I think, that people have. And I'm sure you run into that a lot being a pastor. How do you perhaps overcome that with people or help people through that?
That's a great question. And honestly, a really challenging one. You started talking, it reminded me of a quote by A.W. Tozer. He said, what comes into our minds when we first think about God is the most important thing about us. When we first think about God, what is the image you get in your head? What do you immediately see? Oh, I can tell you honestly, when I would first think about God, before I started getting involved in church and understanding the gospel and what it actually meant, my first thought was that God was like that facepalm emoji. Like he'd look at me and just be like, "Oh, come on, Austin." Like, that was my thought. I thought that's how God saw me. And that was really challenging for me to get over. A lot of people will see God as oh my gosh, what do you say? How do you, like the authority figure that's
Right.
just there to judge you and condemn you and tell you that you're doing it wrong. And you have to follow everything to the letter of the law or you're going to be in trouble. A lot of people see him as a disciplinarian. And then I know a lot of people who just think of God as absent. You got to consider there's so many people who have different expectations of what they want God to be for them. And that's going to be really hard in any relationship. It's Caleb, if I came on this podcast and my expectation was for you to just be on the screen, but I'm going to talk for an hour. And then you don't let me do that. And then I get upset with you. That's not fair to either one of us because that wasn't an actual, like, you didn't know that. And I didn't tell you. And it wasn't a set standard that this is what was going to happen. And so we get into this idea of faith and religion, and we have all of these expectations based on our life experience of what we're wanting God to be for us. And when it turns out, or maybe it doesn't come as fast as we want, then we get frustrated and we say, I told you he wasn't going to do that. My mom's still sick. I told you he wasn't going to heal her. I'm still broke. That job promotion didn't come. I told you he wasn't a provider. Like, we have all of these different ideas of who God should be to us. Here's the point of Christianity isn't that our lives get better. That's not the point of it. And so I think if we can understand that to begin with, I think that would solve a lot of the confusion. The point of Christianity isn't that we have better lives. The point of Christianity is that we need a savior, and a savior was sent in the form of Jesus, and we can receive him to be reconciled to the Father. That's the point of Christianity.
Right.
Okay, if that's the point, then everything else is just like icing on the cake. So I'm redeemed to the Father, which in layman's terms just means I can access the Father, right? I can pray directly to God. I don't have to go through an intermediary. I don't have to bring a sacrifice. I don't have to do any of that. I can go directly to God. Okay, if I can go directly to God and all the other things are included, that he is healer and that he is provider and that he is comfort and peace and he is hope, that's all just like an added benefit. And now when I look at it that way, why wouldn't I say yes? Like, I think it's important for us to be very sensitive to what people have experienced in life and why they sometimes attribute everything that they've gone through to God. I think that's important, right? We go through hard things as people. Like, people on this podcast who are listening have probably been through more difficult things than I've been through. And I want to be sensitive to that and aware of that. I also think it's important, in addition, that we know that God is not meant to be like a genie in a bottle that comes and meets every desire of your heart because you want him to in an instant. There's no like real depth in a relationship like that. And this is what Christianity is. It's relational. I have a relationship with Jesus. I have dialogue in prayer. It's not just me shouting out my demands to God. I have dialogue. And if the Bible and Christianity is going to be the center of everything that I do, well, I just need to realize that everything else I get is just added on top of it. Now, for the person who says, there's no way I can be a Christian because everyone's a hypocrite, you're right. Everyone's a hypocrite. The Christian, the Buddhist, the Muslim, the Mormon, the Jehovah's Witness, we're all hypocrites. So welcome to the club. What do you want us to do? We're all going to make mistakes. I'm a pastor and I make mistakes. 100% I do. There'll be things I say to my wife or in an attitude or a tone that I shouldn't say. And I have to go back to her and say, oh, that was off. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. There's times where I raise my voice at my kids when I shouldn't. And I have to go to them and tell my oldest, hey, I was upset, but I shouldn't have been so upset that I raised my voice at you. There's going to be times where even my church that I pastor, where they have an expectation of something I'm going to do and I fall short. This is just the reality of who we are. We don't get it right 100% of the time. And so for the person who says all Christians are hypocrites, to you, I say, you're right. Want to join? It's challenging all that to say, if we understand what Christianity is really about, it helps everything else make sense.
Right. Yeah. No, that's again a great insight there. I love how you put that. Just another thing I was thinking of that helped me along my journey, in understanding really what God and love really means was when my son was born and becoming a father myself. That really opened my eyes as to what fatherly love truly is and truly means. It doesn't mean just going along with everything that you were just saying. It doesn't mean that I'm going to give my son everything that he wants. Doesn't mean I'm not going to discipline him. Doesn't mean I'm not going to let him fall and get hurt. And frankly, in fact, sometimes I'm going to encourage that, right? Because that's how he learns. That's how he grows. That's how he gets stronger. And so and my youngest is still he's almost 4. He's in that period where he's figuring things out. He wants to do stuff. He's going to fall. He's going to scrape his knee. And I'm sometimes not going to be there to scoop him up and say, hey, everything's all right. Sometimes I'm going to say, hey, get up. You're fine. Move on. And so for me, again, that was like just a really eye-opening experience and helping me understand that, yeah, that's what it means to be a father and to love a son, right? Or to love a child, is to be the guiding light, be the comforter, but also be the one that's going to let them learn and let them face trials and tribulations so that they can be refined and grow in their experience in their life. Again, I just wanted to share that, just something that really helped me out in my journey.
Yeah, I'll share a really quick story. My oldest is 9 now. When he was 3 years old, we used to watch Cars, the movie Cars, all the time on repeat. I'd watch Cars 8 times a day because of him. I could quote it like front to back and back to front. It's ridiculous.
Right.
And his favorite character was a tow mater. And so he's 3 years old. He's about to turn 4. And I said, Micah, his name's Micah. Micah, what do you want for your birthday? He says, I want a tow mater. I said, okay, we'll get you a toy from Target. He said, no, I want a real tow mater. He wanted a tow truck, like an actual tow truck.
There we go.
This
dreams.
Yeah, exactly. Big vision. And this is, I think, very much related to what you were saying. As a father, I have to discern what the right decision is for him.
Right.
Now, I could give him that tow truck. I could go out and buy the tow truck. But if he gets behind the wheel of a tow truck, he's probably going to get hurt, and he's probably going to hurt other people. And so in that moment, as a father, I had to discern, what's the wisest decision? Okay, Micah, I can't get you that tow truck. Now for him, in his young mind, he's, no, you don't love me. But as a father, because I'm able to zoom out and see the implications of what could be, I have to make that tough decision. Now, in the same sense, if God truly is our father, there's going to be a lot of things that we ask him for that we don't see, but might be bad for us. And so we see when we ask, God, I just need that job promotion. I need that job, that new job. I consider this, if you get that new job, is that going to bring you closer to God or push you even farther away from him? And I almost feel like, I can't speak for God, but I almost feel as the father of all of us, that he might consider the same idea. Hey, is this actually going to help them or is this going to hurt them? And so I run into a lot of stories where people have walked away from church or walked away from their faith because they asked for something in prayer on a Sunday morning and it didn't happen. And then they concluded that God wasn't real. I would conclude that thing that you were asking for was probably going to push you farther away from God. And because God is so relational, he has to make these discerning decisions to will things into existence or not for the benefit of your relationship with him. And so I think that was one of the biggest things as you're talking about the same idea with the father is we have to make decisions as fathers on earth for the benefit of our kids because we know what's ahead. In the same way, I almost feel like our Heavenly Father makes those decisions for the benefit of his kids because he knows what could lie ahead.
Thank you for saying it much more eloquently than I did.
All good, man.
No, that's great. That's perfect. No, I love that. Man, we could go on for a long time talking about this. And I hate to even do it, but we need to get into talking about some of the other topics here.
Oh yeah, real estate. Yeah.
This has been, whatever.
That's what this is.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. It's been really cool. So, well, let's try to tie it together a little bit, maybe. So I know we touched on, of course, using meetups and things like that as possible opportunities to spark the conversations. But I guess maybe just give us a bit of an overview of what you are doing in your real estate and all that, but perhaps, how your faith integrates with what you are doing in the real estate world and the real estate community and how you operate.
Yeah, everything we do is missional for us.
Right.
The point of all the businesses that we have operating right now is never primarily for profit. Now, every business has to turn a profit. That's what a business is. So we understand that. But everything is missional. So when we first got in and they told us we couldn't buy a house, it was missional. All right, well, if we can't buy a house, we don't think any other family should have to feel this sense of hopelessness and inadequacy. And even for me, being told that I can't buy my wife a house in front of her, man, all the insecurities I had as a husband, just magnified a million times. And my wife and I felt like nobody should ever have to feel that. Like, we live in what we call the greatest country on earth, and we're telling our own people that you can't buy a house. That doesn't make sense to me. 1.6 million applications. That's a lot of families to say no to. Now, I understand the idea behind being financially literate and being creditworthy and trustworthy with all that. I get that. I just don't feel like it's right. And so what we did was we said, all right, we're going to help 1,000 families become homeowners from home renting over the next 25 years without banks, because we know what homeownership can do for generations in a family. I know what homeownership can do for the husband who feels like he's not doing enough for his family. It just gives him a sense of pride.
Mm-hmm.
It gives him a little confidence. He's able to lead his family better because he feels like, man, I got something. I got something for our family. I know the benefit of homeownership for a family, an underprivileged family or a minority family who can't own a home or who has never owned a home in their lives. I know what it can do for people. And so that was where we started. All right, we're going to turn this pain into this story where we're able to help people. Then we got into teaching and coaching, right? So I teach people how to buy more real estate without banks. And even that, I just love teaching. Like, flat out, I just love teaching. I teach every Sunday. I teach in real estate. I've coached basketball for many years to the high school level. Like, I love teaching. I was a CrossFit coach for 8 years, managed the CrossFit gym for almost 9 years. I love teaching. I'll teach anything. You show me how to knit a sweater together, I'll teach people how to knit a sweater. Like, I will teach anything. I just love the idea that I get to be a part of someone's story to help them get to where they want to go. And so everything we do is literally with that in mind. Our course that we teach, it is about real estate, and I show you how to buy stuff without banks and how to work with on-market, off-market, lead generation, all of that, underwriting, paperwork, who to have on your team. We go through all of that. But what I really teach in the course is how to treat people. How do you treat an agent who has a listing on market? And in a culture, the investing culture, in a culture where we glorify closers and we glorify those who are sharks, like, we literally glorify these people. How do you come in and honor people and make sure that they get a good deal while you're getting a good deal? So everything we do is with intentionality. So the course right now, the big thing that we're doing in real estate is there's this influx of short-term rental operators who got into the game in 2020 when everything was hot. You could literally buy a box and put it on Airbnb and you would make a profit, right? And so all these people have jumped into the short-term rental game. And now we're seeing the data shows, not in every market, but in a lot of markets, revenue is declining. And so what's happening is those people who got in at the height of it are realizing, oh, this isn't passive anymore. Right. I've got to put thought and money into this and actually create something that people want to go to generate more revenue. Most of those people have full-time jobs and they don't want to do it. They just want to get out. Right. Now, the challenge with them is if they do sell right now, because most of them have owned the home for less than 2 years, they're going to pay a bunch in taxes as well. And they're going to be selling at a loss. And so we're coming in because I do creative financing. We're coming in like, hey, I've got, I think 22 short-term rentals right now that we're negotiating through from Kansas City, Missouri to Nashville, Tennessee to Joshua Tree to Western North Carolina, all over the country, where we're seeing this need for these, I don't want to call them wannabe operators, I'm sorry, for these operators who got in at this time who just need to get out of the game because they're bleeding money now. And we've been picking stuff up left and right. It's insane. And even that for me is obviously it's going to turn a profit, but I get to help these people not have to sell at a loss. Like everything that we do is all about how we can help people. Our rental income, and I hope the listeners don't see this as me boasting, because it's really an opportunity for us to give back to people that we know just need a little bit of hope. Our rental revenue every month, in the same way that I tithe to my church, we tithe 10% of our rental revenue to local nonprofits to help the homeless and to feed the homeless.
Yeah.
Everything we do is with the mindset of, I've got to help people. And so there's not a business venture that we're going to look at that doesn't give us an opportunity to help someone else.
Yeah. Wow. So naturally, I've got to ask, how do you manage all this? Because I think I have a lot going on, but hearing you, I'm like, man, how do you handle it all?
Yeah, I would say everyone's built differently.
Right.
And it's not like certain people's genetic makeup is better than the other person's. It's not about, no, I'm not saying that. Like when I say we're built differently, it's not saying I'm just built better than your everyday person. I'm just saying that we're all wired differently. And I have really high capacity, like really high capacity. I can, for the last 9-10 years, I average probably 4.5 to 5 hours of sleep, and I can just go. I've got really high capacity. And so what I've been able to do is when we first started getting into real estate, we scaled really fast. 12 rentals within, 10 months with no financial literacy, no real estate education. I knew nothing, but I have really high capacity and I can go. And so we did. Now, what we were able to do is figure out a model that required a lot of work on the front end, but very little work after that.
Yeah.
And so all of our rentals across 5 different states, all of our longer term rentals are all lease options, where it's the idea of rent to own, but not exactly worded that way in the paperwork. But it's that idea of rent to own where all maintenance and repairs are deferred to the tenant. So my management time for our long-term rentals is literally checking on the 3rd of every month if all the monthly payments were made. Right. So that I don't have much thought in. And then I have an assistant who helps when I need her to. Then we have the course that we're doing. That takes a lot of work and a lot of time just in general. And that I'm okay with. So I manage that. I have one assistant who helps me strategize and flesh everything out. The short-term rental side, I'm actually partnering with a really good short-term rental operator. And so I know how I'm built. I know how I'm wired. I know what I'm good at, which is sales and acquisitions. I know what I'm good at as it pertains to capital raising when we need money. I'm very secure in what I'm not good at, which is operations. And so for those things, I just find the right people. Here's my understanding of myself, and I thank God for giving me insight to this, is I'm really good as the face of a company. That's like my role. That's my strength. I can raise capital. I can do acquisitions. I can speak at events, right? I can build relationships. I can build community. I'm really good at that. And I think God showed me that on purpose so that I didn't get my hand involved in too many things. Everything else that I'm not so good at, I know that God has put people around me to help with that. So why not give them the opportunity to help me? And so I partner with a short-term rental operator. Like I said, I think she's the best in the game to have ever done it. And I don't have to think about that part of the business.
Yeah.
I'm hyper-focused on what I'm good at. Hyper-focused. I'm not ignorant to everything else. I'm competent, but I'm hyper focused on what I'm good at. And then I let the professionals do everything else.
Man, words of wisdom right there. Absolutely. Excellent, man. Excellent. So what is your long-term plan with the real estate?
Man, I've got dreams, Kale. I've got dreams. And I hope this helps someone. One of my big models is from the movie Sing, which again, thanks to my kids, I've watched a million times. But I remember the little guy. Is he a mouse?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, the little mouse. He said, dream big dreams. And that spoke to me. I feel like sometimes God shows us things to wake us up. Like he exposes us to like song lyrics or quotes in movies to get to us. And that was one of them for me, dream big dreams. Obviously, we have the company to help 1,000 families become homeowners. That's number one. I'm going to work on that for the rest of my life. And I would love to see that happen in my time. And if not, I hope and pray that one of my kids will pick it up and keep running with it. So that's number one, as far as where I want to go with real estate. Number two is I want to open and operate a school for junior high and high school students. You can think of it like a trade school where we actually teach things that they find passion in and that are going to help them in their adult life. For me, school was really hard, like really hard. I graduated, Kale, with a 1.16 GPA from high school. It was really hard. I couldn't do the classroom setting. I didn't get while they were teaching us these subjects that made no sense to me. And it was really difficult. And now, I graduated in 06. It's 2023. That was 17 years ago. And we still have the same curriculum for students in 2023 when the rest of the world has drastically shifted. And so my thought is I want to open and operate a school, junior high school, where we teach these like a trade school, where we can teach financial literacy and literally get people ready for adulthood. So that's a big passion. That's the second passion project of mine. The third, I told you I got a lot of dreams. The third is I want to open and operate a winery. I live in wine country, so it makes sense. But really, I've never seen, and I know how representation can change people's lives. I've never seen a Filipino American own a winery. I don't know of any up here, and I'm just outside of Napa. And I know how much representation matters for people. And so I just want to do that to inspire hope in someone else. And because I do enjoy a glass of wine. So that's the added benefit. Last thing is, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I want to own a coffee shop because I know the community that it can create for people.
Yeah.
I know how fun it is for me to go to a coffee shop and just meet people and have meetings there. And we have Bible studies in coffee shops. A good friend of mine out here in the Bay Area has a chain of, I call it a chain now because he has 4 coffee shops in 3 different cities, all under the same name. And whenever I go to his places, I just love how I can meet different people from different walks of life. And like coffee is like the great equalizer. You can come from any walk of life and we can connect on coffee and it's okay.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the dreams. I would like to say in the next 3 years that I retire from my W-2. I work vocationally as a pastor, so I'm compensated for that time. But I would love to be 100% dependent on real estate and be able to allocate. I don't make a ton of money being a pastor. We're nonprofits. There's not a lot of money to be made, but I would love to reallocate that money towards young men and women who feel a call towards ministry and be able to support them so that they can journey and discover what God has called them to. I've got more dreams. I'm sorry. The island I grew up on, Kauai, which is very poverty stricken, like you've never seen before. I would love to build affordable housing for the people in Hawaii. Like my family, when I go to visit, this is like a common thing. It's like generational housing where there's one plot of land and maybe 4 or 5 structures on it. And you have different generations and different parts of your family living in the same place. That's like ideal. But the reality is most families, 3 generations will live in the same house, 3-bed, 2-bath house, 3 generations.
Right.
Because it's so expensive. And so I want to go back to Kauai and build affordable housing for them. And then this is the craziest that I'm actually working on right now. I want to build partnerships with our local colleges and high schools to actually teach financial literacy workshops.
Won't that be something? Yeah. Absolutely.
So I got dreams, man. They told me on Sing, dream big dreams. So I did.
Well, I asked you how you do everything. And honestly, I think this was the real answer in that your intention with doing everything is for a purpose and a higher purpose than yourself. And frankly, my interpretation of that, I guess, would be perhaps that is calling upon God's blessing for these ventures to be successful. And perhaps that's how you have the higher capacity or the high capacity to handle and manage all these things that you're doing.
I add one more thing with that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I want to give everything I can because I think the people who watch and listen deserve that. When I turn 30, I'll be 35 this year. When I woke up on my 30th birthday, I had this reality, and it wasn't out of fear, but I just had this reality that Austin, one day you're going to die.
Mhm.
And it's not like I'm afraid of it and I'm scared and I'm freaking out, but just this reality that I accepted, like one day I'm not going to be here. And I felt this shift in my heart that said, okay, because that's the truth, that I'm not going to be here one day, I ought to spend all the time I have going after everything. Like my worst fear, honestly, is that I end my life not pursuing or living up to the potential that's inside of me. And so a lot of people they look at what I do, they're like, man, you're doing a lot of things. I'm like, yeah, because I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. And I don't want to get to the end of this and have all this potential wasted. I'm here in a specific allotted amount of time. I have no clue how much time that is. And so while I'm here, I might as well give it everything I've got. I know some people will listen to this and they'll be like, oh yeah, YOLO. Sure, you call it whatever you want. But we are so resilient as human beings. We have so much inside of us. We might as well try everything. I'm willing to give anything a shot because I know that one day I'm not going to be here. And I just don't want to leave any wasted potential on the table.
Yeah. No, that's, again, more words of wisdom. It's something that I've been hearing, funny enough, I've been hearing more and more lately of not so much the focus, but looking at death perhaps. And some study, whatever that was done, found that the happiest country in the world is the small country of Bhutan. And what they found is that the reason they hypothesized was because they focus on death 5 times a day. And
that sounds depressing.
I was just going to say, not in a morbid or depressing manner, but for the exact same reason that you just expounded upon, because they focus on it with the intent of, okay, so we should enjoy and we should live this life with all that we have, because we don't know when we're going to die. So it does, if looked at with the proper perspective, give a new sense of purpose and perhaps a higher calling to your life. Again, for some reason, I've been hearing about that a lot over this past year, frankly. So trying to tell me something.
Yeah, I think so. The Bible says, Jesus says this. Let me just tie it back into faith. Jesus says, while there's still light in the world, I will do the work of my Father.
Yeah.
He says, while there's still light in the world, I will do the work of my Father. And then he says, I am the light of the world. So he's saying, while there's still light out, I'm going to do the work of my Father. Guess what? I am light. When I read that, the way I contextualize it is this: while I've still got breath in my lungs, I'm going to do all I can to glorify God in the kingdom. If I'm still here, if I'm still walking this earth, my intention is to glorify God through everything. In the same way that Jesus said, while there's light out, I'm going to do the will of my Father. I am the light of the world. I'm saying, as long as there's breath in my lungs, I am going to do the work of the Father, and I'm going to glorify him above everything else.
Love it. So in the last few minutes, I want to hit on it just because, but you mentioned earlier you managed a CrossFit gym for, I think you said 9 years or something.
Yeah.
So are you still one of those weird CrossFit people, or have you come to the light and now you're just a gym person?
I've seen the light, Kale. You know, what's funny is it keeps going back to faith. We bought this CrossFit gym because our church needed a place to meet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so we bought this gym and we operated it, and it was another revenue stream for the church, which was very helpful for us. And then we moved to a bigger space, and I still coached there. I stepped down as manager. We sold it, right? We sold the business to someone else, a very close friend of ours. And then I just coached. And it was fun. Like I used to coach the 5 a.m. crew. So I'd be getting up at 4:10 in the morning, get there to the gym, coach them, come back home, spend time with the family before the kids go to school. I've since stopped CrossFit and I'm going back into what was a goal of mine in competing in jujitsu. So
Oh,
that's what I do now
nice.
is I'm there training and the goal is to compete at least once this year and then see where it goes. But yeah, that's a place where I feel like I don't have to think about everything else that I'm doing and I can just be there and it's just good for it's good for your mind. It's good for my attitude too, to work it out.
100%. That's that is one of the biggest reasons that I promote physical fitness so much. Why it's so important for me beyond the physical aspect is because of the mental aspect. And yeah, the time for me at the gym is the only time in the day where I'm not focusing on everything else. That's the kind of time for me to decompress and just focus on the here and now, frankly. That's the only time that it happens. So it's a huge stress reliever for me. And people like yourself, like myself, we're in relatively high paced lifestyles, right? We got a lot of stuff going on. That's super critical.
Yeah.
Because
It's one of the only times that honestly I don't feel one of the only times that I don't feel tempted to grab my phone.
yes,
I can't
right.
grab my phone when I'm rolling around on the mats. There's no way. But if I go to your everyday gym, like a 24-hour fitness, and I'm lifting weights, I could look at my phone in between sets.
Yeah.
Even in CrossFit, I could look at my phone in between lifts.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that forces me to put my phone away and I can't look at it.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And then I make it a point, like just part of my morning routine is I do grab the phone in the morning because I do like the Bible app
Yep.
and stuff like that. But beyond that and putting the music on when I get to the gym, I will not look at the phone. I make it a purpose to get all this stuff done. And then finally, when I'm done with my morning routine, then I'll get on the phone, check the
Yep.
messages and get things started. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That alone is such a crucial thing of putting that darn phone down for
Yeah.
a couple hours, as sad as it sounds. That's like, goodness.
Yep.
That's
I
where
know.
we are today. Okay. So you do the jujitsu. Funny is that just Wednesday, a couple days ago. So I took my 3-year-old to try out. So he did a little trial class of jujitsu.
Love
And
it.
it was the cutest little thing. He's tiny. He's got
Yep.
this little gi on that's bigger than he is, and he's trying to like do these rolls, and it
Oh, I
was just
love it. I
a
love it.
cute little thing. Let me ask you. So, with the jujitsu, do you still do weight training or other things outside of the jujitsu training, or
Not really. The only thing I do right now, so right after we go anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes. And then there are weights and an assault bike. So what I've been doing after that is
assault
after the
bike?
time on the mats.
What's an assault bike?
Oh, an assault bike is or assault bike, Aerodyne bike. It's like a stationary bicycle that you can add resistance in and
Okay.
count like how many calories or how strong you're actually pumping the handles. So I do intervals right after jujitsu. So 20 seconds of work and 10 seconds of rest. So
Oh,
I do it for 4 minutes like a Tabata. And
mhm.
so from the mats, I go straight there. I don't even take a sip of water. From the mats, I go straight to the bike and just pump it out. 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest for 4 minutes. And I'll do that once or twice. And what I do miss about CrossFit is Olympic lifting. Man, love it. I absolutely love Olympic lifting. And so I might add that into the programming. My wife actually does CrossFit still.
Okay.
I don't. So
Yeah.
she does CrossFit and then she does on off days, active recovery. She does Pilates or yoga and she loves it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I played volleyball and basketball for a long time growing up and through school and through high school and everything. Like my knees just hurt. And so I've got to be very careful because I'm still young and
Yeah.
I don't want to be limping or walking, having knee issues as I get older. So I'm trying to be very careful and cautious of that.
Yeah. No, it's and I like this because again, it's the physical fitness thing is different for everybody. Find what you enjoy, find what you can do
Exactly.
without getting burned out on it. And
Yep.
For everybody, it's going to be something a little bit different, and it doesn't need to be the same thing for the rest of your life either.
Yeah.
For a while now, you're doing the jujitsu, and who knows what else may come next.
Yeah.
And you just gotta do something.
Yep.
The weightlifting thing for me, that's been my thing. And like I've dabbled in other things here and there. Like I dabbled in jujitsu for a very short time and Krav Maga for a short time, those types of things. And I enjoy those things. The part that I struggle with, and I think it's just a hard-headedness thing with me, is I'm so into my routine with the weightlifting that I just find it extremely hard to break free from that to do other things. So I would love to, for example, if I get my youngest son into the jujitsu, like I would love to do some jujitsu classes as well. But I'm like, man, I'm going to be, number one, probably sore already from the gym. And am I really going to want to do that? And it's late at night. Like I'm a early morning person and go to bed early type of person. So that's going to be, so I don't know. I'm making a lot of excuses in my head already.
I love that you point that out yourself, that I didn't have to say it.
Exactly.
I do, but I'm like you. I'm early morning, so I do 6 a.m.
Right.
So I'm 6 a.m. to 7 in the gym. And then I get home about 7:20. My kids are just waking up and eating. Like my oldest is old enough to get his brother's breakfast, like cereal in a bowl. And so for me, this is the schedule that works. And I'm with you, man. You've just got to figure out what works for your schedule and your availability. There is a little bit of stretch that you ought to make just to make it important, like you have something invested in it. But when I look at fitness, honestly, I look at fitness more, like you said, for the mental and emotional health. Fitness for me isn't really, I know it has the physical fitness benefits, but it's more so for my mind. That's why I do fitness.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's going to have both things. I think the other thing with me is I've been weightlifting for 25 years now.
Oh yeah. So that's just in you.
It's become an identity.
Yep.
At this point as well. So it almost feels like if I were to stop the weightlifting and go do something else, it's betraying myself. So I think that's just one of those weird things where you get wrapped up in that identity thing. But that's neither here nor there. Man, I got to say, this was, to me, this was really inspirational, and I can see why you're a pastor. So I think you're in the right vocation for the time being. And congratulations on all the various successes that you have and everything you have going on. And I love the visions. I love the big dreams and living the life on mission, as you put it. This has been really great. And I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with us here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for just asking the questions and creating space for people like me to come on and share all that God has done in our lives and how we're navigating through faith and investing, because that could be sometimes really blurry,
right,
to figure out how to navigate both of those worlds. So yeah, man, thanks for creating this space. This is great.
Yeah. And let's talk about this winery thing, man. That's been on my list too. So
Let's go, Kale. Come on.
let's make it happen.
Yes. Jesus often talks about vines and the vineyard. So
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, man. Cool. You've already dropped a lot of golden nuggets and wisdom, but let's see if you can distill it for us here. We like to ask our guests for 3 actionable, practical tips based on what we've talked about.
Yep. Very easy for me. And it's in succession because I like patterns. Number 1 is be a student, right? Find someone you can learn from. That's important. They're going to have more wisdom than you. They're going to have more life experience and investing or business experience. So find someone to learn from, a mentor, a coach, whatever it is. Number 2 is find a running buddy, someone who's at the same place as you, where you can bounce ideas off of each other and share the wins and losses. Someone you feel like is going to push you to keep going. And then the third thing is find someone to teach. Everything that we learn isn't just for ourselves. I tell our team often at church, everything that we get isn't meant to go to us. It's meant to go through us. So it gets to us, but we distill it to someone else. I think if you do those 3 things, you'll be successful in any area of life, whether it's faith, family, fitness, finances, investing, whatever it is. Be a student, have a running buddy, and find someone to teach.
Man, I think, do you want to take the host position for this podcast, man?
Get out of here.
No, man, awesome. Again, mic drop. And in honor of my co-host, Brenna, who's on vacation, her famous question is, what is your favorite pizza and from where?
I'm going to disappoint a lot of people who know pizza.
Okay. Right.
I'm going to disappoint a lot of people because I'm in California. We don't like, that's not our thing. I
Right.
know there's California Pizza Kitchen, but that's not even good pizza. All right. I'm sorry to everyone who does pizza from New York and Chicago. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all the pizza aficionados. My favorite pizza is stuffed crust pizza from Pizza Hut.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay.
Our options are limited out here.
There we go. Pizza Hut needs some love too. So wonderful, wonderful. Cool, man. Hey, where can people reach out to you? Where can they follow you? What's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah. If you're on social media, on Instagram, it's just my first and last name at Austin Largusa. If you're not on Instagram, you should. But if you're on Facebook, you could just search my first and last name, Austin Largusa. And if you're not on social media at all, you can go to simplerealestate.org and all my information's there. We can link up on a call and kind of see what you're working through.
Awesome. Awesome. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Reach out to Austin if you're looking for creative finance, want to live without the banks. This is the man to talk to, or if you want to start a winery. So
there we go.
Thank you again, brother. Really appreciate you having you on here. And I think you shared a lot of wisdom with our guests, with our audience. But thank you again. And we'll see you guys next week for another episode.